The year is 1901. In the first few weeks, Queen Victoria, having reigned for 63 years, falls ill and dies. In America, William McKinley is re-elected as president, but is assassinated just 6 months after his confirmation. In South Africa, the British Army continues to fight the South African Republic in the Orange Free State in what will be known as the Second Boer War or the South African War. In Scotland, Bar releases its fizzy orange drink Iron Brew, and it becomes as iconically Scottish as haggis and shortbread. And after months of serialization, the important Scottish fiction House with the Green Shutters is finally published in novel form.
On February 13th, 1901, on a relatively fair winter day, with temperatures just below freezing, Lewis Grant Gibbon, now Mitchell, gave birth to her third son, James Leslie Mitchell, the crofter's son who would gain literary fame as Lewis Grassic Gibbon. The author's father, also named James Mitchell, farmed the holding of Hillhead of Segget until 1907. It is this place that lends its name to the town where Cloud How, the second book of A Scots Quair, is set.
All that is left of the small croft house where James Leslie Mitchell grew up with his father, mother, and 2 half-brothers is this bit of concrete and some repurposed stones.
After a brief, miserable year in Aberdeen City, Mr. Mitchell took up the lease on Bloomfield, a croft with acres of red clay soil in the ancient community of Arbuthnott, the basis for Sunset Son's Kinraddie. Though the house itself does not meet the description of Blowery and Sunset Son, the fields, with their high elevation and exposure to the wind, certainly must have inspired the sense of deprivation and unceasing toil that figures so heavily in Chris Guthrie's childhood. Just up the road from Bloomfield is Haredon, the home of Rebecca Middleton, his future wife. Her father, Robert Middleton, had a fond spot for young Leslie and was the real-life inspiration for Long Rob of the Mill. According to Leslie's first biographer, Ian S. Munro, who would have heard it from Rebecca herself, Robert Middleton had always supported the youth that others thought strange and wayward and arrogant. He was pleased to find himself in the character of Long Rob of the Mill when Leslie became successful with Sunset Son as an adult. From Bloomfield, Leslie and his brother would walk the 2 miles to the local parish school of Arbuthnott. Surrounded by countryside, trekking across in all types of weather, it's no surprise that the land itself became one of his most memorable characters. This is the old Arbuthnott school that saw many generations of students before closing in 1973. Leslie attended Arbuthnott School from 1908 until 1916. Rebecca Middleton, his future wife, was 2 years behind him, attending for the first time in 1910. In the Sunday school photo from the year 1913, you can see young Leslie, 12 years old at the time, and his future wife, Rebecca Middleton. In 1913, a young man named Alexander Gray took over the school. Gray took notice of the unusual boy who read voraciously, and he helped talk Leslie's father into allowing him extra years in education and gave Leslie considerable freedom in writing. They developed a close mentor relationship that would survive Leslie's graduation into Mackay Academy and his swift exit, his years in the army, and ultimately his move to England where he became a published author. Leslie's adult relationship with the Grays began to include wives and family, so that when Rebecca had her first child, Leslie wrote to the Grays immediately the day after. Years later, when Leslie died suddenly, Rebecca sent the Grays a telegram and even relied on them to help navigate issues of propriety with the family and the community for his funeral. Less than half a mile from the school sits St. Tiernan's Kirk, the church of Arbuthnott, where the lowest farmhand might mix with the likes of the minister and the family from the big house. The church stands much as it did in Leslie's childhood, and just as he describes in the prelude of Sunset Song.
Once the wee hall had been for the folk from the Meikle house, and their guests and such like gentry. but nearly anybody that had the face went ben and sat there now. It had fine glass windows, awful old. The wee hall had 3 bit creatures of queens, not very decent like in a kirk as window pictures.
Inside, visitors can see the stained glass with the 3 quines, the medieval effigy of Hugo le Blond of Arbuthnott, and one of the finest church organs in the Grampian region. It is this Scotland, the old farming communities where the peewits still cry and the how is still happed in mist, that Gibbon breathed back to life, even as the sun set on the lives of what he called the last of the peasant folk.